Jesus said, "If anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." And the question of what it actually means that we need to lose our life to find it is a hard one to grasp. And it's even harder to see why it was that the Lord needed to lose his life to save the human race at Easter. So as with Peter, it is hard for us to see, or it may be hard for us to see just how this makes sense. But this principle might not be so hard to understand and accept if we think of it in terms of devoting our life to some cause or some purpose. Because while we're seldom in situations that require us to literally risk our literal lives for things or for a cause, almost everybody in some way or other devotes their life to something. And we even say we give our life. We give our life for our family. We give our life for our work. We give our life for some cause that we truly believe in. Now, there's a saying that no one on their deathbed says, "I wish I had spent more time at the office." And yet this isn't really necessarily true. It's true that at the end of our lives, we often think about our families and our loved ones, and we might wish we had spent more time with them. But at the same time, we also remain very dedicated to whatever cause or thing we've done in our life that was important to us. And very often, this was their place of work. I wish I had spent more time, doing well what I was all about. Now, the heavenly doctrine has remarkable things to say about the effect that our daily, continual, ordinary life of service has on us. And it seems actually that it is especially the life of service that the Lord means when he says, "Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." And so our topic today is how it is that we go about losing our life in order to find it, and what it means that we should deny ourselves and that we should take up our cross, and why it is, therefore, even that the Lord gave up his life on the cross, and in so doing completed his victory over the hells. Because there's some magic, or there's something miraculous that's involved in just how this works. And it might best be illustrated by this somewhat counterintuitive teaching that is in true Christian religion. And this passage speaks about the things that we do for our own family, our domestic duties that we all do. And the passage says this: "It's a different kind of love which urges us, each person, to these duties from that which urges them to the duties of their employment." In the case of a husband's duties to his wife, or a wife's duties to her husband, it is the result of conjugal love, and it is dependent on this. In the case of a father's and mother's love for their children, it is the result of the instinctive love that everyone has, what is called parental affection. But this conjugal love and the love for children, together with their duties and the fulfillment of their duties, do not create love towards the neighbor the way the fulfillment of our work-related obligations do. Isn't that curious? Conjugal love, the things we do within our marriage, within our home, do not create love towards the neighbor the same way that our work-related obligations do. And so this last part at the end might seem like a surprising teaching, especially given how central conjugal love is said to be in every person's life in the teachings of the new church. Because conjugal love is the fundamental love of all the loves in heaven and the church. So in what sense are its duties less beneficial than the duties of our employment? And the passage goes on to explain it. It says that these duties are less beneficial because they are the result of instinctive loves that everybody has, whether bad or good, or else because they depend on the state of a relationship between a husband and wife. So if you love your partner, naturally you're going to want to do nice things for them. And other passages describe these things as being related to taking care of what is our own, like an extension of taking care of ourselves. I take care of myself, I take care of my family. These are important to me. And it's good and proper that we should do this, but it's not the same thing as what we do in what our job is. And this is why these things do not create love towards the neighbor the way the fulfillment of our work-related obligations does. And so it's an amazing thing that the work of an employment can create or produce in us something that was not there before. And surprisingly, the fact that we're paid for our work and that we often do it mainly just because we're obligated to do it, apparently this does not diminish it or remove that goodness. Which is not to say that the motivations that lead us to work are necessarily good, and there are employments themselves that are bad, that are dishonest or harmful in some kind of way. And we might not even like our job. We might be doing a job every day that we don't enjoy at all. But most forms of employment, almost all forms of employment, serve some kind of genuine purpose. And there are interesting aspects of working that mitigate our natural motivations that might not be so good. Our natural motivations are doing it for credit or doing it because of the money. But there are ways in which the Lord mitigates this. We read, this is just a few passages after the other one I read, that it's easy for the Lord to erase people's idea that they deserve reward and credit, provided these people do these things or attain this love or goodwill primarily through working justly and faithfully in the position, business, or line of work they are in, and with the people with whom they interact. That is, the fact that we do this daily, the fact that this is a part of our daily life, means that over time, our less noble motivations tend to fade, and the actual interest in the work tends to grow. And we get what our duty is, and we see that duty as more and more important, and it shifts our life in a positive way. And this follows from the very definition of charity, which we read today, that it is doing good to our neighbor daily and constantly. Not only to our neighbor as an individual, to our neighbor collectively. And the only way to do this is through practicing the goodness and justice in our position and work, and with the people with whom we have any interaction, because these are the things we do every day. And when we're not doing them, they still stay in our minds. So the emphasis here is what we do constantly and repeatedly, the way we behave constantly and repeatedly. The constant repetition of useful actions just changes us. We're told that act precedes, our willing follows. So whatever it is we do over and over again, we get used to it. So over time, we become accustomed to whatever work it is that we do, and we become better at it. And we may come to have an affection for it that may not have even been there at all in the beginning, although at the beginning we might have loved it from the start. But whatever it is, we find that we will miss it when we stop. Now, with regard to domestic duties, the same must also be true of the work that we do within our own families, despite what that passage says. The passage says it creates charity to a lesser degree because it's instinctive and because it's an aspect of taking care of ourselves. But if our purpose in raising our family, if our purpose in doing things for our partner is to have a household and a family that serves the Lord and that serves society in general, the effect is ultimately the same. In doing those things, love for the neighbor is created. Now, the writings talk in interesting ways about the way things become second nature to us. We read also in True Christianity, also in this same section, that it's well known that habits form a kind of second nature. And therefore, what is easy for one person is difficult for another. It's easy for manual laborers, for porters, for farm workers to work with their arms from morning till evening, but a delicate person of the nobility cannot do the same work for half an hour without fatigue and sweating. It's easy for a forerunner with a walking stick and comfortable shoes to ply the road for miles, whereas someone used to riding in a carriage has difficulty jogging slowly from one street to the next. All artisans who are devoted to their craft pursue it easily and willingly, and when they're away from it, they long to get back to it. But it is almost impossible to force a lazy person with the same skills to practice that craft. The same goes for everyone who has some occupation or pursuit. And many people who have had the experience of watching someone at work, or many people have had the experience of watching someone at work and realizing you couldn't do that job for half an hour. Or if we remember when we first experienced having to work an 8-hour day or even a longer day than that, especially at some kind of physical labor, we may have wondered, is it even possible? Is it the end of the day yet? After the morning work, you just don't believe you can do it anymore. And yet, when you do it day after day, within a few weeks or a few months, you get used to it. The effect of doing something repeatedly or being involved long-term in some kind of cause or project changes us. It changes us in ways that we just don't realize. And what may be happening is that the old person is fading away and dying, as it were, and a new person is being born. And this is what is meant by taking up a cross and following the Lord. A cross is the symbol of struggle. We take up the struggle. We willingly do it. We carry it forward, and that cross changes us. That's why it is the symbol of baptism. And the mechanism for this, in order for it to happen, has to do with the effort that we place. And it's put this way in the Arcana Celestia, 1937, and this is an amazing passage. It says, a person ought to compel himself to do what is good and speak what is true. And the arcanum, or the secret lying within this, is that in so doing, a person has a heavenly proprium bestowed on them from the Lord. And this heavenly proprium is formed within the effort of his thought. The heavenly proprium, the heavenly self, the new person, the regenerate person, it's formed within the effort of his thought. So when you're putting in that effort, something is going on. So the new person is formed within effort, and the effort isn't ours. the effort is the Lord's, and still we choose in freedom to use it, and then the Lord attributes it to us. And when effort is employed to do something useful, the love of the neighbor is being created where it didn't exist before in a miraculous way. It's a miracle. And the same passage notes that we don't feel this freedom or we don't feel this love while it's going on because it's masked by the discomfort and the feeling of compulsion that almost always go along with having to employ effort. We don't want to employ effort. We don't want to struggle. And so we don't notice that this new love is coming into us. It's natural to us to want to avoid excessive effort. And that, of course, was the reason for today's recitation. Enter by the narrow gate. Wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. There are many who go in by it because narrow is the gate and confined is the way that leads to life. And there are few who find it. And I don't know if it literally means few, but I think all of us know what it means to feel the confines of work. It seems to us naturally to be easier to avoid work than to do it. And it's completely natural to chafe against the confining sense of obligation that work imposes on us. And this is an appearance, but it's impossible to avoid this appearance and these feelings. And it's true, there is such a thing as working too much. You shouldn't work too much. And rest and recreation are important. But there's no new life without effort. And the happiness of heaven is closely linked with this willingness to do it. As we read in our lesson, unless one is active, there's no happiness in life, because angelic life consists in use and in good deeds of charity, and consequently angelic happiness consists in use, stems from use, and is proportionate to use, that is, to the good deeds of love and charity. And this principle applies to every area of life. In marriage, for example, we read in Conjugal Love that, quote, an absence of focus on any pursuit or business is a significant cause of marital unhappiness. We read in Conjugal Love 249, by pursuit or business, we mean any effort to be useful. When, as a result, a person is engaged in some pursuit or business or other useful activity, his mind is fenced around and circumscribed as though with a circle, within whose bounds it is progressively ordered into truly human form. And because of this, conjugal warmth lasts better and longer in such people than it does in others. An amazing statement. Your mind is fenced around and circumscribed as though within a circle, within whose bounds it is progressively ordered into a truly human form. So you narrow down the person's life. These are the things you need to do. And inside that circle, your whole being is rearranged into a truly human form. It seems narrow and confining, but the opposite is true. It is the method that creates love miraculously within the context of our day-to-day ordinary lives. And this is why the Lord said that whoever desires to save his life will lose it. He means that whoever desires to find happiness without being willing to do that service will lose that happiness. But whoever is willing to give up their own happiness for the sake of doing something useful will find it. And Peter symbolically resisted this process by saying, no, it should not happen that way, that the Lord must not be killed and rise the third day. And we might be with Peter in this. It seems a perfectly natural thing to say. But the Lord called him Satan because the resistance to devoting ourselves to uses prevents us from finding happiness. And of course, this description does not tell the whole story when it comes to our regeneration, and much less does it really even tell us all that much about the reason for the Lord's death and resurrection. But it's all connected together in a beautiful way, and it does explain a vital aspect of our path to finding a good life. And this is the joy that the Lord was talking about it when he said, "These words I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full. Greater love hath no man than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends." Amen.